Hey listener, thank you for joining us. We're joined today by Cecilia, a talented creator and animator based in Canada. Her current comic, Lemon Soda and Coffee, is a heartwarming romance where the lead character, Axel, falls in love with a stranger he runs into in a street, and against all odds, serendipitously becomes her new neighbor. We discuss her foray into comics starting from growing up in Hungary to attending animation school in Canada, her regimented work style and its ramifications, positive and negative, and she shares some honest advice for up and coming comic creators. We really enjoyed getting to know Cecilia and hope you enjoyed too.
Hi, Cecilia. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't we start off by having you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
My name is Cecilia, the author of Lemon Soda and Coffee. I was born in Hungary and I moved to Canada at the age of 9, and I've lived here ever since. I have a degree in 2D animation, and despite having tried to write stories many a times before this, Lemon Soda and Coffee is actually the very first published comic I have ever made.
I mean, looking at it, it's incredible that this is your first story. I want to get really into lemon soda and coffee and really dig into how you came up with it. But before that, how did you get into comics, animation, and just drawing overall?
I've always been drawing ever since I was a little kid. It's one of the stories of the artist saying like, "Oh, I've been drawing ever since I could hold a pencil." It's the same thing, but I haven't started reading comics that early on. My earliest memory of reading comics was when I was a kid in magazines. I had a magazine about Witch. It's like an Italian comic, and there's like a cartoon series also about it.
Hmm.
But I personally didn't really read it because I didn't have all the editions, so I didn't understand the story. I was just filling out the quizzes and everything. And it was really around the time I got into high school that I started to read manga. And it's after that that not only did I start to be interested in comics, but also started drawing a lot more frequently. Like I used to draw before that, but it was after that that I almost every day just drawing and whatever.
So you said in high school you got into manga. What were some of the manga or anime that really influenced you, or ones that you really loved reading when you were growing up?
So the very first one I've ever picked up from my high school's library is one called His and Her Circumstances.
Hmm.
It's very old. I think the anime is as old as I am. And it's one of those stories that looks really unassuming from the start. In the end, it turns out like the story ends up really going to some really deeply rooted traumas of the characters. So I guess that influenced me a lot, even though I haven't read it in such a long time.
Hmm.
But that was my very first experience of like, this is a story. It's not like a Garfield or Asterix, Obelix. It's not a more like a Western style of comics with just more
Hmm.
like about comedy and everything. So I got thrown into the deep end.
Yeah, and you mentioned lemon soda and coffee is something that can throw you into the deep end as well. So, after high school, you decided to pursue a degree in 2D animation. What made you say, okay, not only do I love comics, reading manga, I want to do something related to art and drawing with my career? What led you to take a step to pursue this as your college degree?
So all throughout high school too, I was always like the art kid, and like the teachers and everything, all my classmates would in by default art person to go to. And I don't know, it was just a natural course of action. I actually had applied to do studio arts like painting and stuff, and it was when my high school art teacher in like senior year that presented us all these other like artistic opportunities, where she was like, this is by the way the college I went to, and like this
Hmm.
is what there is in it. So I applied to both of the programs, and I decided to go into the animation one instead. I always liked movies, and I mean I watched anime all throughout high school, so like, I was familiar with a lot of animation. And though I never have animated prior to that point. I started animating in college.
Wow. And you said you were in Hungary until you were 9.
Yes.
Were there any comic, anime, cartoon influences from that period of your life, or did a lot of it happen once you moved to Canada?
Yeah, most of it is after I moved to Canada. Like a lot of my childhood cartoons that I watched were either American cartoons or a lot of like European or Eastern European style of cartoons. So like a puppet animation
Mm.
cartoons, or like we had Hungarian folk tales, but as like stories that were animated. It's like a narrator telling the folk tale. So it wasn't really an influence for me. Like I remember fondly all of those things I used to watch, but they're not really directly related with what I am inspired by nowadays.
So your art style is incredibly unique. It's very pretty. How did you come up with that art style, and what do you think influenced it? Because it's interesting. Sometimes we talk to creators who grow up reading a lot of manga, watching a lot of anime, and their art style can be very Eastern influenced. Yours is more Western influenced, but it's a very unique thing. I wouldn't try and put it in a category. I think it would be doing it a little bit of injustice. So how did you arrive at your art style?
So it was an incremental thing. Like I started by that one manga I talked about earlier, and then it basically my art style changed based on what I was reading. So I had a period where I would read Soul Eater, and my style would look like Atsushi Okubo's a little bit, or all of these different phases of manga artists that I was reading. I would in it without even thinking. Like, it wasn't a conscious decision to draw a certain way. It was just like that's what I'm gonna do now. From yesterday I did this, today I'm gonna do this. And it was just a build up like that. And once I arrived to college, my teachers were like, well, you should change your art style because we don't really want you to be drawing anime in animation school. So it was in that period of my life where I didn't want to have that comment again of being like, oh, that you draw anime, because it's kind of like like in the arts in animation school, it's like, don't do that.
Mm.
Like at least in my teachers would be like, yeah, try to do something different. And also, so I don't remember fondly really those times because it was really uncertain trying to figure out how I can keep my inspiration but also make it more different enough so it doesn't get labeled as like, oh, it's anime, even though there's a whole lot of different anime styles. It's just really silly to say that there's only one style of it. They all
Mm.
have their own quirks. But yeah, it was working studying in animation, and then my student film that I have made graduating, that I sort of like changed certain aspects of. I don't know how to explain it. It was really just a natural evolution through all the years, and that's sort of trying to distance it from anime a little bit.
So how did you studied animation, you finished that. How did you go from that to making comics?
Ever since I've been reading manga and everything, I would write stories and draw. Um, but before that, I actually wanted to be a novel author. Like I wanted to write books, and I have still a bunch of stories that I would have wanted to make into books, and just never got further than a concept or the first chapter. And with my knowledge in from animation combined with also just the real years of just trial and error of what looks good, it was just also just a natural thing that I would arrive to, like, hey, now I know how to do posing properly so it looks good on the screen. How further away is it to put it on a page instead?
How did you come up with a concept for lemon soda and coffee as your first published work?
Lemon soda and coffee original idea was to make something simple. Since it's the first one, it was going to be more like gags or like one-off stories of these characters. But yeah, it didn't happen that way. I ended up just slowly changing it. Like I didn't exactly know where I was going in those couple of first episodes. It was really an incremental um evolution of the story where I was like, hey, I can put this in, I can put that in. This is more interesting than what I thought about before. I'm gonna do that instead.
When you started, did you have just the characters and you're like, it's going to be like single episodes, you walk away with something at the end of the episode, and it evolved into this larger story? Is that sort of how it happened?
By the time I started posting, I had a little idea of maybe wanting to do something more complex, but yeah, it was really just the characters, it, mostly the characters that I had.
So, what's your weekly process like? I saw in one of your videos, I think this is maybe your most recent one, you're like, if I showed you like the end-to-end screen recording that I have, it would be 22 hours, which I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. 22 hours of work. So, what does your weekly schedule look like for you to get these episodes up?
So for that one, when that video was about illustrations, like one single drawing takes me like a long time depending on the
Mm,
complexity of it. For episodes, I usually start off. Lately, I've been a little bit more tired, so I had difficulties writing my scripts. But I have a Word document with like what's going to happen, like describing what the characters are feeling and what they're gonna do. Like May says this, Axel answers that. It's like a I have my outline for the episode, and
yeah.
then I make like thumbnails on a larger canvas where like I draw in like really simple sketches of like this is roughly how they're going to be placed in the page, and then I transfer them onto like a long webtoon canvas and whatever, and do draw the panels like that. Lately, I've been working a lot with 3D models in order to save some time and not be so exhausted by the
Mm.
end of the week. So I have my 3D models and I trace right over them with the line art, not with an I don't sketch. There's very rarely that if I have a very close up shot or just like cute mini versions of characters, that's when I'll draw over them. But otherwise, a lot of it is 3D models posed because it's just really tiring to work. So this is the only way I could find to make it easier. And then I do all of the flat colors and all the effects and everything. And the last thing that I do is put in all the word bubbles and everything. And that's where I can make typos, which has happened a couple of weeks ago. I forgot a verb in one of the word bubbles, and it was really sad about it.
So, what is your favorite part, in this long process that it takes to publish a single episode?
I'd say maybe the scripting process and the sketching of it, the very first rough sketch,
Yeah.
but because the rest is like more just to kind of it's sometimes really tedious, especially when you just go through all the flat colors. And when I decide to like, hey, I'm going to put patterns on their clothes, it's like, oh no, I have to do that on every panel that piece of cloth will appear.
And what about like it seems like the hardest part is just the tedious execution of bringing those panels to life, the coloring, line art, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's just very long. As much as I enjoy working on it, it's sometimes just that's the part that makes me the most exhausted.
So you started this early 2020, and you've basically stuck to the schedule of publishing every week, which is an incredible achievement. What has been your keys to making that happen, to delivering this comic consistently, which has then led to this huge audience that enjoys your webtoon?
Um, I don't know. I had graduated animation school in 2019, and I had a little bit of animation work after graduating, but I just really wanted to make a story. And I was like, if I don't do it now, then I'll be thinking about doing it. So it was just like, we'll try. And in the end, I never actually got like any animation work between that time. So I was like, well, I'm gonna do this then, I guess. And it was a big bargain, really, to start. And I'm surprised we're here. I didn't really expect all of this, and it's kind of daunting sometimes to see like just how many people actually read it. It's like I'm a fundamentally very nervous person, so it's just really surprising to me that we're here.
So now you have, 100,000 readers. When you put your first episode up, what did you kind of expect, or what did you think would happen? Because, this is obviously like, it's a huge success. People love what you do. So what was your expectation when you first put this out?
I didn't really have any expectations. It was just like, okay, now it's out in the ether. Somebody may or may not read it one day.
And here we are, almost 150,000 subscribers. One other question I had about the story is, what? How did you come up with Axel, May, and Milo as the main characters? Like, how did you decide at a romance, heartwarming story where one of the characters is a single mom?
The very first character I think I designed was May. I think I sometimes a little bit fuzzy. I don't have a super big good recollection of this, but I really just wanted to make this just one-off drawing of a mom with a little kid, and it just sort of happened that I ended up being like, hey, that would be a good idea to use in a story these characters.
Mm,
And Axel was a character I've kind of sort of had with me for a couple of years. Like it's a character that I would have used in a different story. He was like the very first iteration of Axel would have been in a novel I would have wanted to write, and he had a different name, and he was younger in the story. He's a college kid or what I think. I don't know. It's just he was his both his looks really and his personality was a little bit different because I was not sure if I wanted to what kind of person I wanted to give him in this particular version. But he was a character that I wanted to put somewhere at some point, and he ended up being used as the main character for Lemon Soda and Coffee.
In your stories, you are not afraid to talk about, really tough things, mental health, emotional trauma from the past. You mentioned earlier when you first started with the concept, maybe you didn't know where you wanted to go, but as time went on, you had a sense of what the story was about. What made you include these tougher themes into the story?
I I have a big respect to a story that is able to make me cry. I mean, I cry very easily, so it's not really a big achievement. But you know, I started posting Lemon Soda and Coffee in 2020. Everyone's kind of closed in. I didn't really
Yeah.
have much of a reason or a way to go out, and I think my own mental health might have influenced me wanting to tell a larger story than just a simple slice of life romance. I don't they never made the conscious decision to like, okay, I'm gonna start talking about how Axel is actually a really like he's a really, really anxious person or his trauma and everything. It wasn't like I didn't decide it. It was just something I ended up writing without really thinking much about it because I was also kind of working in my bedroom all this time. So
It just felt like a natural extension of the story, it seems.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that authenticity, it just completely comes through. There have been some very emotional scenes for me as well. So credit to you. And I think most importantly, your readers. We'll get into some fan questions later. Um, I'm sure you see in the comments how much your readers love you. So thank you so much for telling your story. Uh, Before we get into some fan questions, though, what were the biggest things that you've learned now that you've been doing this for over 2 years?
One of the things that I've learned is that in order to be able to tell any kind of story, at least as far as I'm concerned, I need to completely detach myself to from um reading or like in my own free time. I don't read a lot of other things because I'm just so very tired. So I just need a moment to feel where I'm doing something completely different from
Mm.
sitting in front of my computer and drawing, which is was been I've been doing that quite a lot. So one of the things that I've learned is that you need to be able to do something other than work. I'm kind of a workaholic, so for me it's difficult for me to do that. I if I don't work, I feel like I'm being useless, kind of. So ever since the start of season 3, I've made a point of like, okay, this is the weekend. I will be doing something else. I will go outside. I live in Canada, so like it was winter for most of that part, but now that it's sunny, I will go outside. I will play games. I will do whatever other than work.
It can be really difficult for some folks to take a step away, and making a comic is very draining, physically, mentally. So what have been the things that you've done that's helped you recharge? What are the things that you enjoy to do outside making your comic?
Yeah, like I said, I play a lot of games. Like I have Stardew Valley that I play, or just you know uh, other thing, simple little games, nothing super complicated because I'm not really good at it, but either. But it's really mostly games, actually. Not that I think about it most more.
I'm a big game fan too. It completely erases any issue I have in my mind. So I get it. Are you ready to dive into a few fan questions? We got some great responses from your fans. So first one, if lemons this is from Mahek. If lemon soda and coffee were to finish, would you still continue making webtoons? If so, what's the next webtoon you would make? And they also added, thank you. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
Aw, thank you. You too, Mehek. So yeah, I would want to continue writing as much as as much as I can. Um, I don't know. I have a couple of ideas of stuff I'd want to do, but I really will only have time to think about it once Lemon Soda and Coffee comes to closer towards its end, because I have like a couple of ideas, probably still in the romance genre, and with the but I might want to do a story that's a little bit more focused and maybe a bit shorter, so like the story is a little bit more well structured. And so, yes, I'd like to continue writing webtoons or comics or maybe books. I don't know that yet. Uh, it would probably be a romance, but beyond that, I'm not totally sure.
This next one is from Ore Kizu. Why did you make Milo so cute?
Because I wanted to make him cute. I don't know. I like drawing kids and just kids in general. I personally am pretty. I don't know. I have a lot of siblings and everything, so for me, it's just I don't know. For Milo, I just wanted to make him cute. I don't have a big reason for that.
The next question is from Ashley Ann Richmond. Do you have any tips for drawing characters over and over?
It's a difficult question to answer. I would say that the way I have decided to draw May and Axel is that I was going for like a silhouette that even if I don't draw them very precisely, they'll still be recognized. Like his hair doesn't make sense. His hair looks kind of silly actually, but he has a silhouette that's recognizable. So for drawing a character over and over, I don't know. I've been drawing these characters for so long that it's just natural for me, like even without a guide and everything. So I, I I don't know. Like the best I can say is to have like a recognizable silhouette, but that's not really a cure all answer to anything.
I think it's very hard to give a tip for that one for sure. And then our final fan question from All Maria Spring. Hi, I'd like to ask, made by Cecilia, which character she relates to the most.
It's definitely Axel. He's the one that basically the story is told through his eyes. So I don't know. He's the one character that I end up thinking about the most too. So I definitely relate to him a lot. I mean, the most in the whole story.
I have a few questions around just supporting yourself as a comic artist. We've talked to a lot of different comic artists about how they make money to support what they do. What have been the things that you've done to successfully support yourself? What has worked best for you?
A lot of for lemon soda and coffee, it's the viewer ad revenue, like that goes on for that, especially ever since being able to put the video ads on them. I feel I always felt really bad for putting those ads in front of the episodes, but that like really does make a difference. And one of the things that Lemon Soda and Coffee also benefited from was the creator rewards program that after a certain amount of views gets you like a certain amount of money for that number of views. I forget exactly what the things are. And I have my Patreon also that I get money, and that's I now have a store, but that's not exactly the I'm not super on top of that one uh, currently because I haven't been able to design more
Mm.
uh like stickers and everything. But this is what I have as far as um revenue streams. If I that's what I can remember.
And in terms of Patreon, you have a big Patreon community. So, what has worked well for your Patreon? What have people signed up for? And how do you keep that community engaged?
Definitely I would want to be more active on my Patreon actually, but I've done illustrations, and like the two things that work for my Patreon the best were like the um basic one where I have the illustrations, and the other one where I post early access chapters for Lemon Soda and Coffee, but that had I recently changed that. But yeah, those for me worked quite well.
And you launched a Discord recently as well. What has it been like for you to have another space where you can talk to your uh, readers?
It's been nice. It's not like the most like I wouldn't say that we talk every day on the Discord, but it's just a nice little chat with all these people, and like some of the we have um with some people we have like a little bit of we do D&D a little bit, so it wasn't really originally what I made the Discord for, just sort of happened. Um but yeah, it's just nice to chat with people. I don't know, it's been nice.
And in terms of your future, what do you have in store for you? What are the different things that you want to do?
I definitely want to continue writing stories. Um I don't know. For now I'm writing Lemon Soda and Coffee and everything. So right now that's going to be my reality for the foreseeable future.
Do you
But
have a sense of how long the story will take? And maybe that gets into spoiler territory, and we don't want to say anything.
um no, I don't know exactly how long it will be.
That's good, because if you said like 6 months, I'd be like, okay, that's a problem. But if you don't know, I actually feel a little better. It means that we have a bit more we can enjoy. Uh, Before we go to our rapid fire round, what advice would you give to a young creator?
Don't do what I did. Don't just start being like that's the don't just start being like I'm gonna post my story and hope it works out, because I got super lucky and I'm surprised it's like that. So it's like don't think that this is the only thing that you maybe should be doing. Like I said, I it was extremely lucky for me to even to have all these people who enjoy reading my stories. So it's like
I love how we're talking to you. We spent most of the pod talking about how good the story was, how successful you are, and you're like, don't do what I did. Like this may
no,
not be the right path.
not what I mean is like just because I managed to I'm not I don't know how to explain it, but there's a lot of stories on Webtoon. It's a huge website, and I got extremely lucky to get where I am. So, okay, I'm going to reformulate my answer. Try to do what I did, but like I said, I didn't go into it with expectations. It's very lucky that Lemon Soda and Coffee got the audience that it has today. I feel like a lot of people, even including me, when you start posting is where it's like, oh, it's going to get an audience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen exactly like that because of just how many comics are out there. I'm not saying it's not about competition or anything. It's just a lucky shot in a
Yeah.
sense. I encourage anyone to draw and do what you want, but this is really quite difficult to do. And it's not something that's good for everyone. Like even I've had some really rough patches and everything. So it's draining to be working all alone in your room for I used to work 6 days a week. Now I finish an episode in 4 days. So for me, who's you said disciplined earlier, but it's I guess that's what it is. It's not something that is necessarily good for your mental health to be doing this. It's not a it's just really really hard on you to do this.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something like tens of thousands of webtoons. First of all, Cecilia, I appreciate your honesty, appreciate your humility, and if I could pay some compliments your way, like you said, there is luck involved, but if you look at the story, you look at the art, um, there's a reason why it's done so well, and that you definitely deserve the position that you're in. And I'm grateful that you're able to come here and share a little bit of your story because while there is some luck, I want to give you a lot of credit for what you've done because at the very least, I have enjoyed your story, and I know there's a lot of people that agree with me. So yeah, appreciate you sharing your advice.
I hope it helps. I don't want to be too negative about it because I would be a very big hypocrite also if I started being okay. I did say don't do what I did, but I'm a hypocrite a little, I guess.
Are you ready to close things out with our rapid fire questions?
Sure.
What three webtoons would you take with you on a desert island?
There's only a couple of few webtoons that I read because in my free time I try to do a lot of other things. So the ones that I do read are like uh, the like the short a couple of panel stories or something like so. Like the couple ones that I read are like Mondo Mango's like the little slice of like his life comics or whatever.
Mm.
I read Amoy Moy's Mekar. I don't know how to say the title. I read like I forget Pet Foolery is like the little comics with the little cat and the big dog,
Mm.
or like the Trash Mermaid that I also read. So I read like these uh, like verse feel good little stories.
If you could pick any creator, it can be webtoon, manga, anime. Uh, which creator would you want to have dinner with?
Maybe I would want to meet the author of the very first manga that I've read, Masa Mitsuda, but we probably wouldn't be able to talk to each other. So I don't know. I don't.
We'll bring a translator. That's part of the fictional scenario.
I don't know.
So you get.
I would just be, I don't know, thanking her and asking her about that story because lately I've been thinking about it more, and it's something I eventually I want to get all the tomes for myself to have it on my
Mm.
shelf and everything. But yeah, maybe her.
What's your favorite scene from any manga or webtoon that stuns you visually?
Visually, definitely the author of Daytime Shooting Star and Yamamori Mika. I love her art style and everything like this, the characters and the hair, that the way she draws it on the characters and everything. So it's all of the panels, they just feel so not exactly necessarily for Daytime Shooting Star, all the other like stories that she did that was made, But I love her um art style and everything. So I don't have a specific scene in mind, but I love how soft the characters look.
And then final question, if you could hang out with any fictional character, who would it be?
I would probably want to meet a character from Soul Eater. It really had a really big face, so I mean, so maybe like a Maka or Soul from Soul Eater. I just want to. I don't have anything to tell them. I just want to hang out because it's really cool.
Well, Cecilia, thanks for joining us today. Listener, please check out Lemon Soda and Coffee if you haven't already. You can find Cecilia, made by Cecilia, on Twitter and Instagram. There's a card there, so you can, check out Cecilia's website, go to the Discord, and find all sorts of goodies in there. But Cecilia, thank you so much for your honesty, your candor, your humility, and for joining us today.
Happy to have been a guest here.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any feedback or want to be featured as our next guest, please write to us at pixelsandpanelspod@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, like, or give us a 5-star rating. See you all next week.